There was a point in my photography where I think everything just felt really hard, and it kind of came just after that very steep learning curve that you have when you first get into photography. You know, there's so much to learn, isn't there, when you first start, but then it quickly kind of plateaued for me. I'd learned how to use the camera and simple compositional tips like the rule of thirds, but you know, I was creating photos that just were lacking in some way, and I'd go out and I'd stand in front of a scene that should have looked absolutely amazing, and I'd come home with photos that felt, well, honestly, really flat and disappointing. But the worst part was I didn't really know why. You know, I'd look at other people's images and I'd think, how are they getting their photos to look and feel like that? And for a long time I genuinely thought I was missing something, or maybe I just wasn't very good at it. But over time I realised it wasn't the equipment or my technical ability that was holding me back. It was, I think, seeing. So today I want to share 3 simple techniques that completely changed how I take photos, and it took me from feeling stuck into turning my photography into my full-time job within just a couple of years. So when I first started photography, I thought I understood composition. I learned about things like the rule of thirds, leading lines, and all those types of things, but still my images were kind of, well, not cutting the mustard basically. But what I later found out was that composition isn't so much about putting, say, your horizon on one of the third lines. It's really about the visual arrangement of the subjects that coexist within the frame. It's about how the shapes, lines, light and space are organised that can help to convey a feeling, tell a story, or even offer intrigue. And the moment that this clicked for me, everything completely changed. So instead of just pointing the camera at something that interested me, I started asking myself, what is actually going on in this picture? Where does my eye go to first? Where does it go to second? Is it flowing through the frame, or is it just bouncing around it? For example, a rock in the foreground isn't just a rock. It's a shape that can influence how the eye travels around the frame. If you've got a rock that points out of the frame, that's where the eye might be drawn to. Like a path, it isn't just a path, it's something that can tie elements within the frame together. It can be the glue to the whole image. But often it's the weight and spacing of the objects within the frame that can dictate how the eye explores the image. Now, once I started seeing a scene like that, I stopped capturing things and I actually started arranging them. And suddenly, even very simple locations started to feel full of potential. Usually in these types of videos I share my own work as examples all the way through, but today I would like to flick through a few pages of a couple of my all-time favourite photo books that have inspired me over the years. Now these are from the 50s through to the 80s, and there's another one at the bottom that's more recent. This one is Stephen Shaw's Uncommon Places, and the one below it is Fred Herzog's Modern Colour, 2 of my favourite all-time photo books from my ever-growing collection. But let's take a look at a few examples of composition that don't necessarily follow composition rules, but are more about placing or arranging elements to create balance and harmony. First up, I'm going to take a look at Fred Herzog's book, which is probably my all-time favourite book ever. I've mentioned it before on the channel. I spend so much time looking at the images in this book. It's just incredible. Highly recommend it. Right, let's look at this image. Now, I think this image here from 1953 looks amazing to me, but I don't think it really adheres to any compositional guidelines or rules that you might hear talked about in modern photography. So for me, there are a few things that I absolutely love. Firstly, the colour palette, the 2 pastel colours that complement each other. Secondly, the light, it's just so soft and warm. And thirdly, the depth and space that is created by leaving plenty of space around the building in the background. Now, even though there's a lot going on in the image, it has a calmness due to the 2 similar sized blocks of colour. So for me, it feels complex but minimal at the same time, which is what I absolutely love. I also like how there's a straight vertical line here which helps tie the foreground to the background. It's not something that hits you straight away, but I am absolutely convinced it was Fred's intention at the time when he took the shot. I think it really binds the image together. Now these 2 pages from Stephen Shaw's Uncommon Places are a couple of my absolute favourites, and you can clearly see here how he must have meticulously moved his heavy film camera around to make sure the spacings between the lampposts and signs felt balanced. Another point to note is, of course, again, the colours are very, very minimal, which offers a cohesive, calm feel to both of the images. I just love both of these shots. I think they look absolutely incredible. So back to Modern Colour by Fred Herzog, and another couple of shots that feel really calm and balanced. You know, everything feels like I guess it owns its own space and complements the next subject within the frame. Again, minimal colour palettes, keeping things really calm and simple. Now, I'm not suggesting my work comes anywhere close to these 2 amazing photographers, but I do see some similar techniques in my own work, like colour minimalism and very structured compositions where subjects have room to, I guess, occupy their own space, which is probably why I like both of these 2 photographers, even though my photos are very, very different. I guess we're drawn to typically what we like ourselves, don't we? You might see similarities here as well in your work. I think it's quite funny, isn't it, how we all see image making in a kind of slightly different way. But yeah, I do see similarities, even though the subject matter is completely different, which is fantastic, I think. Now, if you'd like to dive deeper into how I approach camera technique and also landscape photography composition, I've got 2 ebooks for you, and it's basically a step-by-step guide to how I go about creating my photos. They've actually become really, really popular, and I've had some amazing feedback so far. So yeah, they're well worth checking out. I'll leave the link in the video description for you, or you can scan the QR code or follow the link that's on the screen if you fancy taking a look. But next, I want to talk about turning a flat photo into a 3-dimensional image. So this one was massive for me. I used to take photos that looked okay, but they felt quite flat, like everything was stuck on the same plane, very 2-dimensional, if you will. And a photography mentor once said to me, your camera captures the world in 2D, and it's your job, Ian, to make it feel like it's 3D. And that kind of stuck with me, and I still think about that pretty much every time I take a shot now. You know, depth is what gives an image the feeling that you can almost step into the frame. And there's a few simple ways to help create this. The first being layers. So if you think of a photo having 3 areas, the foreground, the midground and the background, it can simplify the process, because by arranging elements within these areas, you can instantly transform a 2D image into a 3D masterpiece. Even something small in the foreground, like say a rock, a patch of grass or a bit of texture, instantly gives the viewer a sense of space. Light also does the same thing. When part of the scene is in shadow and a part is in light, the image suddenly has shape. It stops being a flat photograph and starts to feel like a place. The eye instinctively gets drawn to light, doesn't it? So by having a darker foreground and a lighter background, it can really help transition the eye through the frame. Atmosphere plays another big role as well. So typically things in the distance appear less detailed because often those things are softened by natural moisture that gathers within the air, and that natural softness can add a sense of depth to the image. Now you can also use depth of field, I guess, in the same way. Out of focus areas draw the eye into the in focus areas. So again, that's maybe an option that you could choose to use to draw the eye through the frame. I think what is really interesting is it really does come down to the look that you want to achieve, because sometimes depth can be distracting. So here are a few examples. Now this shot is of some amazing signs which look absolutely fantastic, but it really looks like this was taken from some distance with a longer focal length, and the distance between the signs is actually compressed by that longer focal length, meaning all of the signs almost appear like they're on the same focal level or focal plane. They look very close together anyway, and that makes the image feel more about the signs and less about the environment. I'm sure Fred Herzog's intention here was to make this image purely about the colours and the shapes and the signage rather than the actual environment. Had he been a bit closer, shooting wide, you'd have seen all of the gaps between the signs and some of the buildings and more of the people. So the image would have had a completely different feel. This book here by Hans Strand, which is called Aqua, is a recent addition to my collection, and I really enjoy this book. I've not spent that much time with it as yet, but I've been really enjoying it. There's some stunning images in here, but often Hans looks to create very two-dimensional flat images that remove depth entirely and make the image more about the patterns, shapes and form of the landscape, which I personally love just as much as the images that have a three-dimensional quality. So hopefully this demonstrates a few ways that you can approach depth to convey a certain look or feel in your own work. So next I want to talk about trusting the process. Now this might be probably the most important one. Now for a long time I go out shooting with this pressure on myself, to come back with something really good. And if the light or the conditions weren't amazing, I kind of feel like the whole day was a complete failure. These days I try to trust the process instead, and I talk about this quite a lot. Now this might sound like a bit of a pointless piece of information, but just please give me a minute to explain, because I guarantee Stephen Shaw, Fred Herzog and Hans Strand all had a process that they developed over time. I know I've got one. Now, it didn't come to me straight away, but it's something I think I've learned over a period of time. Now, firstly, I think you have to understand what it is that you actually enjoy shooting. Is it story? Is it abstraction? Or simply just a direction of light? And when you understand what it is that you enjoy, you can then double down on that and take a little bit of a deeper dive into it. So for example, I enjoy shooting landscape photography, but that's pretty vague, isn't it? But when I look at my work, I think I kind of favour things like simplicity, movement and colour contrast. These are the things that I'm subconsciously looking for when I'm out roaming the trails. And I've come to learn that by shooting and evaluating what I like and what I don't like, and by doing more of the things that I like and less of the stuff that I don't, it's kind of, led me into a process that I can fully trust and appreciate now. I guess it's a pretty simple procedure, but having a process and trusting it can really help you out when you're, out with your camera and things don't seem to be going in your favour. If you look at Stephen Shaw's earlier work, such as American Surfaces, which I think was shot maybe in 72, 73, you can really see how his development and approach to photography changed. For me at least, I find the compositions in American Surfaces quite loose, but 10 years later, his approach feels like completely the opposite, to be fair. They're incredibly well thought out compositions, and I think it made Uncommon Places, in my opinion, an incredible collection of images. I think there's maybe 10 years between those two books. So yeah, seeing the changes is really interesting. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this little kind of look into a few other people's work alongside my own. And if you're interested in the way that I shoot, please do consider checking out my ebooks. They've, like I said, become very popular and I've had some amazing feedback so far. So yeah, it really does help support the channel as well. So thanks in advance if you fancy an in-depth insight into how I go about shooting my landscapes. Yes, anyway, a massive thanks for watching. I hope you did enjoy this week's video, and I hope to see you again next week. Take care.